Good afternoon. Bapak Adan Adipatana, President of EIE, Chair of the Academic Accountant Compartment, Professor Dion Agustia. Greetings to all members of EIE, all participants in the National Accounting Symposium. Selamat sore. It's an absolute pleasure to be addressing you today, and I apologize that I'm not able to deliver this live because I'll be traveling and in a different time zone on the day of the symposium. I do sincerely hope for an opportunity to join you in person in the future. In Indonesia, I understand that clear decarbonization targets have been set at both government and at the private sector level, driving towards achievement of the net zero target. So sustainable development, sustainable growth is of critical importance. Professional accountants play an important role in transforming practices in corporates, in the public sector, in public practice as well. And that's underpinned by the solid technical knowledge and also importantly, strong ethical backbone that inspires trust. I understand that the National Accounting Symposium is an important platform in Indonesia for researchers, both academia and practitioners, in your continued pursuit of excellence in research and in knowledge in the various accounting disciplines. And I truly appreciate having this opportunity to be sharing with you and to draw your attention to the IAASB's recently issued public consultation on assurance standard for sustainability information. We call it ISSA 5000. And for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call it exposure draft ED 5000 for the rest of my presentation. Now, we certainly hope that you will be an active participant to our consultation process, whether through your organization, through the Indonesian Auditing and Assurance Standards Board, through EIE, or in your personal capacity. Now, assurance is a very important part of the trust and integrity equation. I'm sure you agree with that. This is hence a very critical emerging area, and we will be very grateful for all feedback that will help us ensure that the final standard lands in a way that will work very well in all jurisdictions, in particular in Indonesia. Now, Indonesia economy is widely expected to grow into one of the most powerful globally within the next couple of decades. So every incremental step you take is a big step forward for the global economy. The IAASB has already embarked on an extensive outreach program. There are various webinars with in-depth presentations that have already been held, and more will continue to be organized over the next couple of months. For today, I'll be sharing with you some key highlights from the proposed standard. I will not be diving into deep technical details. I definitely hope to give you enough to get you excited, to get you curious, so that you'll start watching the other webinars and to read the proposed standard and the explanatory memorandum yourself, because that will be the best way to get all the information you need. So let me start off with a little bit of an overview. Why are we here? The IAASB has prioritized the completion of ISSA 5000 as a standalone end-to-end sustainability-specific standard. Now, as a board, we committed to having a final standard approved before the end of next year, 2024. And there are a few reasons for that prioritization. Number one, we believe and we've been told that users of sustainability information will benefit from external assurance provided by independent professionals who are committed to a high level of quality and ethical standards. And number two, that there are a need for global baseline that is developed in a robust and transparent manner. We've seen that for the reporting side with ISSB under the IFRS Foundation, and it is equally important to have the same robustness, the same transparency on the assurance side. Number three, the market needs an assurance framework that builds upon well-tested practice that is already in place around the world. Number four, we're aware that in some jurisdictions, the countdown clock is already ticking for assurance requirement to be put in place. And as a result, we need to move very quickly, but of course, very thoughtfully to publish a proposal. So here we are. We have accelerated the timeline. We have released what the board views is a robust standard. And at this point, it is crucially important that we get your inputs to make it better together. The end goal from our perspective is for marketplace to think of sustainability assurance the same way that they think of financial audits today, with the same level of confidence, with the same level of quality, and for it to be as commonplace as financial audit. But we won't get there overnight. Now, we believe the proposed standard ED 5000 represents a significant improvement over existing standards in terms of driving consistency and quality, because we have added a great deal of specificity over our existing assurance standard as it relates to sustainability information. So ED 5000 is the general requirement for sustainability assurance. It is, as I mentioned, an overarching standard for sustainability. ED 5000 covers the entire engagement from beginning to end, from engagement acceptance all the way to reporting. At the same time, recognizing that it's an overarching standard, we can't have everything all at once. It is not going to provide the same level of details that we have now with financial statements audit, where we have the full suite of international standards on auditing ISA. Also, we need to recognize that both the reporting landscape, the reporting practice, as well as assurance practice are on a maturity curve. And we need flexibility to deal with emerging issues and other stakeholders' feedback moving forward. So having now opened up the new 5000 series, we have the opportunity to go deeper in future standards. And we may next go into specific topics such as human rights, human capital, biodiversity. We could go into aspects of topics, for example, performance against targets, for example, strategy. Or we could be dealing with specific elements in an engagement, for example, materiality, internal controls, reporting, right? So we have what we think are sufficient material in this overarching standard in relation to all these different elements of the engagement, but there may be a need to do a deeper dive in future standalone standard. So we're keeping an open mind about what we may deal with in greater detail at a later date. And in relation to that, in our consultation, we asked a specific question about topics that you think we should be addressing at a future date. And we hope, as with other aspects of the consultation, you will share your view with us on that. Now, there are a few overall design principles that are important for me to flag to you up front. ED 5000 is designed to be suitable for use for all sustainability topics and information disclosed about these topics. We have written the standard to be framework and topic neutral, so it can be applied whichever framework the company adopts to report on sustainability. So it could be ISSB standard, it could be the European ESRS, for example. Now, one thing that we've heard repeatedly from regulators and other policymakers is that we need to make the standard profession agnostic. Our current assurance standard ISA 3000 is already profession agnostic. So it's the same with ED 5000. And that means that it has to be relevant to it. It needs to be able to be applied by both professional accountants and non-accountant assurance practitioners, as long as they fulfill the full requirements of the standard. Now, we knew that it is important for ED 5000 to be entirely standalone standard. So what that means is you do not need to refer to ISAE 3000 to understand the foundational principles and performance of an assurance engagement. All the necessary elements have been brought over from 3000 over to ED 5000. It is absolutely critical that practitioners applying the standard, whether they are professional accountants or not, are committed to adherence to stringent ethical requirements that are at least as demanding as the ISSA code, which includes independence requirements, as you are aware, and also that the practitioner is part of a practice that is subject to ISQM 1. So these are the fundamental premise to all IAASB standards, and these are the non-negotiable elements that underpin quality, and that is very, very important. Now, ED 5000 addresses both limited and reasonable assurance. Where appropriate, we have signpost requirements that are different under limited vis-a-vis reasonable assurance, and you will see a capital L or capital R next to the number, depending on whether they are requirement for limited or reasonable assurance. And we present them in table format, side by side, to facilitate ease of comparison. Finally, we have developed ED 5000 to be principles-based while still providing sufficient specificity to drive consistency of the conduct of sustainability assurance engagement for all entities, regardless of size or complexity, and to help address challenges typically faced in conducting such engagement. Now, as you can imagine, it's often a delicate balance. We often have one camp telling us that you need to keep it at an absolute high level, principle based, otherwise you end up offering rigid rules that ignore proportionality. And then you have another camp that will tell us, give us more support, give us more illustrations, give us more help. So clearly, again, this is the point where we need your inputs on, have we got the balance right between principle-based requirements and with enough guidance to address the challenges and to drive global consistency. Now, as mentioned right at the very beginning, I don't intend to, and we don't have time to go into any level of technical details. What I thought I'll do in the remaining short time that we have together is to pull out two topics and to share how we have provided greater specificity in the context of sustainability information assurance. So one of the key areas that many stakeholders are concerned about, in particular among the regulatory and investing communities, is fraud in sustainability reporting or greenwashing. Now, the term greenwashing is not explicitly called out in ED 5000. I don't think so. But if you do a search for the word fraud, it turns out more than 100 times in the 200-page ED 5000. Now, it appears in multiple places. It appears, for example, in the context of professional skepticism, which is defined in the same manner as in an ISA, which is attitude that includes a questioning mind, being alert to conditions which may indicate possible misstatements due to error or fraud, and a critical assessment of evidence. And professional skepticism is to be maintained throughout the engagement, recognizing the possibility of misstatements due to fraud may exist, notwithstanding past experience with management and those charged with governance, the honesty and integrity of management and those charged with governance. Fraud is also referred to in the engagement team discussion, engagement leader, key members of engagement team, plus key external experts as well. They huddle together, they discuss where misstatements may arise, whether due to fraud or error. Fraud is also referred to in the context of understanding sustainability matters and sustainability information, including characteristics of events or conditions that could give rise to misstatements of disclosure. In the application material A296, for example, we provided a helpful list of how material misstatement due to fraud may look like for sustainability reporting, which I think serves as good reminders. So, for example, fraud could appear in the form of aggressive, overly optimistic internal and external targets. It could be incorrect or misleading claims around products. It could be misstating sustainability information in order to get special funding or to fulfill a customer's demand or to obtain certain green credentials. Fraud could also present itself as an attempt to reduce carbon tax liability or overstate carbon credits. And that could, of course, be increased opportunity for fraud due to immature internal controls over sustainability reporting and so on. And then in separate application material A355, we provide examples of the different forms of misstatements that could arise due to fraud. For example, it could be omission of information. And an example that's in the application material is a company reporting on land rehabilitation program for 3 of its mining sites, but they keep quiet about another 2 sites where significant degradation has occurred and there's no plan to rehabilitate the land. So they omitted information, there's incomplete information here deliberately, and that is obviously fraud in order to mislead the reader. Another example, incorrect classification of information. So in order to report favorable diversity information, gender diversity information, the company decides to classify seasonal contractors who happens to be mainly females as permanent full-time contract employees so that the overall gender diversity information look favorable. So all these, what I've just mentioned, form part of the risk assessment process that the practitioner will need to go through, and that will form the basis of their further assurance procedures. And of course, we also have requirements around the required responses by the practitioners when they encounter fraud or suspected fraud, and that include, looking at the implication on their risk procedures that they've already done, and also evaluating the reliability of the written representations and so on. Another area that I want to very briefly touch on before we wrap up, again, just as an illustration, is the consideration of materiality. Unlike financial statements, which are reported in a single currency unit, so it could be Indonesian rupiah, it could be US dollar, for example, sustainability information, on the other hand, may be measured in different units. Right. So, for example, sustainability report could include, among other things, carbon dioxide emission, and that is measured in tons. And then it could also report on safety violation, and that is measured in terms of the number of instances of such violation. So the different measurement units make it difficult to determine materiality for sustainability information as a whole. So it is difficult to say, okay, this is the number, this is the materiality for this entire sustainability report. Our board therefore decided that materiality would not would be considered or determined for each disclosure, and not necessarily for the information as a whole. Furthermore, sustainability information often includes more qualitative disclosure. For example, this description of processes. Now, as you can imagine, it's more challenging to determine materiality when planning and performing an engagement for qualitative disclosure. Now, it's difficult to assign a number to a qualitative disclosure, but we did hear on outreach that practitioners do apply the concept of materiality to evaluation of misstatements identified in qualitative disclosure. So when they identify a misstatement in qualitative disclosure, they will consider, well, would that misstatement influence the decision of a user? So ED 5000 requires a practitioner in planning and performing the engagement for quantitative disclosure to determine materiality and performance materiality to deal with aggregation risk. And that is consistent with the extent requirement within ISAE 3410. And then for qualitative disclosure, the practitioners will not be required to determine, but consider materiality. Now, I also want to flag very quickly that a practitioner's consideration of materiality, so the materiality that we're talking about in ED 5000, is different from materiality consideration from the preparer's, the reporting perspective. In reporting, materiality process is one where the company uses to identify information that's relevant for users, and that will be included in the report. So understanding the management's materiality process may be useful for the practitioners. But the practitioners' consideration of materiality, what we call materiality in ED 5000, is focused on whether the misstatement is material. That is, whether it will be reasonably be expected to influence the decisions of users. So I've shared with you two quick areas to illustrate what we as a board have done to build in greater specificity. As I said, I really want to know whether you think we have the right requirements built in there, whether we have built the right level of guidance as well inside ED 5000 to support application of the requirements. Okay, so I think this is a good place to do a wrap up. I mentioned at the beginning that IAASB has planned and has started to execute a comprehensive global outreach program. If you go to our website, you will see already uploaded there recordings from previous in-depth webinars that have been held. So welcome to have a look at those. And there are more coming up, including one that is organized by IFAC and targeting audience in Asia Pacific. And that will be happening on the 28th of September. And I'll be joining a few other board members to do further sharing. And I'll also be moderating a panel which comprises of a representative from regulator, from investor. We have a practitioner. We have also a colleague from the ethics board joining us on the panel. So don't miss that. We have 4 global roundtables happening in this period as well, in New York, in Brussels, and Sao Paulo, and there's one in Asia, of course. It will be held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, on the 10th of October. The Indonesian Auditing and Assurance Standards Board has been invited, as well as the audit regulator from Indonesia. So across all these different engagements, the key objective is, of course, to excite you, to engage you, and to invite you to participate in our consultation. This is the time to voice out. This is the time to influence the standard. Let us know what you like about it, what you don't quite like about the standard, so that we can all work together to make it better. So with that, I thank you very much for your kind attention. Again, great appreciation to EIE for the invitation to share. I hope that you now feel that you know ED 5000 better than when we started. And our board look forward very much to hearing from many of you. Terima kasih. Thank you.